I think it is really important for anyone and everyone to be aware of where their food comes from. I may not quite agree with it at this point in time. I don't have all of the facts. And so in order for me to fully make up my mind on what I think of large-scale farming, I need to meet the people doing it face to face. I was born and raised in St. Joseph, Missouri. I went to college here, got a bachelor's degree in biology, and met my husband in college.
I grew up in St. Joseph, about 4 miles away from 229 highway, major highway. I fell asleep listening to semis and the train.
Right now, my husband and I live in the middle of St. Joseph. We actually live right on a very busy street, and I am an assistant environmental supervisor with water protection for the city of St. Joseph. Growing up, I was not that connected to the food I ate. We basically just bought stuff from the grocery store other than the vegetables we grew. I started in high school reading a lot more about farming and animals and animal welfare. Here's some of my collection of farming and homesteading obsessed books. You know, just wondering, well, how were they raised and how did they die? And those are things I really started thinking about. I actually was vegetarian for a while just because I couldn't handle it. My husband's family has a farm that they've homesteaded. They have had it in the family since 1834.
My uncle raises cattle, hogs, and goats. It's small scale, it's a 224-acre farm, so it's enough that we have a lot of fun with it, but nobody's making their living off of it right now. When
my husband and I got married and we started kind of getting more involved out at the farm, he's butchered, pigs for the family, and we raised meat chickens 2 years in a row, and that had a big impact on me.
So we've done a lot of our own butchering. We actually went a year without buying any meat. We butchered all our own meat for a year. Last winter, we had a cow that needed to be put down. We slaughtered her out at the farm and then brought her back to our house on 22nd Street. 22nd Street is super busy. There's constantly traffic. And into the back room of our house where me and my family processed it. We're about halfway through the first day, and we look out the alley and see that there are two cops walking up the alley. When I answered the door, they were both standing with guns on, their hands on their guns and ready for action. Somebody had called the cops saying that we were dragging in human carcasses, and I explained what was going on and asked them if they wanted to come inside and take a look at the cow that was being butchered in our back room, and they said, "No, thank you." I don't know what the process looks like. I don't know what a feedlot looks like. I don't know what any of these large-scale farms that really support America and allow America to do what it does. I don't know how they operate.
Obviously don't know much about large-scale farming, or really farming in general. I mean, I'm learning, and I will admit my ignorance.
We get this really cool opportunity to tour the beef industry. So we're going to look at the process from beginning to end. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, we're starting off with seed stock at farm, and then we're going to go to a cow-calf operation. We've got a couple more stops planned out over 3 days. We're going to end at the grocery store. And so I'm really interested to talk with people who, their whole life, I mean, this is how they earn their entire living. They don't have supplemental income. They're ranchers.
When you're raising a living creature that feels pain and fear and has family bonds and social interactions, you need to respect that creature. And I think it's good to examine that entire cycle and ensure that if you're going to eat an animal, that cycle is humane and appropriate and respectful. We started our journey by meeting first thing in the morning, even before the sun had come up, to meet Kara Lee, who would be guiding us on this trip.
Nice to meet you. I'm Kara Lee, Production Brand Manager with Certified Angus Beef, and I'm here this weekend to share a little bit of perspective from the beef community with Josh and Leah.
And we piled in a van and hit the road. We spent the first part of our trip sleeping, as it was very early in the morning, on our way to our first stop, which was the Dale Bank Seedstock Ranch. First of all, I had no idea what that term even meant. So more than anything, I was just looking forward to finding out what that was. But we were navigating these small gravel roads. We actually got lost for a little bit and had to call for some guidance. But we made it safe and sound.
Hi there. Hey, how are you? I'm good. Josh. Josh? Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Leah.
How are you, Leah? Matt
Good.
Perrier.
My name's Matt Perrier. I'm the 5th generation at Dale Banks Angus Ranch in Eureka, Kansas. We are a seed stock operation raising registered Angus cattle. We run about 400 to 500 registered cows, sell a couple hundred bulls per year. My wife Amy and I, my mother and father Tom and Carolyn, own and operate this ranch. Today we had a couple come down from St. Joseph, and they got here just after we had finished getting our cow herd, our spring calving cow herd, ready for artificial insemination or AI breeding. So we saw those cows as they were being taken back. You know, the paperwork and the bookwork in the office is probably the most important thing we do. We had 13-year-old cows coming through this chute this morning. So the decisions I made, not just months or years ago, but that was almost 2 decades ago that we were talking about breeding her mother. And so, you know, good or bad, those decisions have a pretty lasting impact on all that we do.
So what kind of training did you, just growing up on the farm and learn from your dad, or?
How long do you have? In addition to just growing up around this business, I went to school at Kansas State University and got an animal science degree with a business and marketing option. Moved back here in May of 2004 and then started the real learning, I guess. The
applied learning.
The applied learning, exactly.
It's a really steep learning curve. Like for me as someone who wants to, you know, transition more into farming, it's like, okay, so maybe I need to go back and get an animal science degree.
Yeah, there's more to it, and I don't know why we've always kind of had this stigma that, well, you know, if you can't do anything else, you can be a farmer. I've done a lot of other things, and I can tell you this is the hardest job, not just physically, and it's hard physically, but from a thought standpoint, a planning standpoint, and a patience standpoint. I mean, it just, you've got to.
We were taken out onto the pasture to see the cattle getting moved from one field to the next, and they were just absolutely beautiful animals. The Seedstock Ranch produces bulls for other farmers to use to improve the genetics of their herd. And I can definitely see why they take such pride in their genetics.
Then we came a few miles up the road to where my wife and I, Amy, and our kids, Ava and Lyle, Hannah and Henry live.
I'm Amy, and I live here at Dale Banks Angus with my husband Matt and our 4 children.
And you guys are in charge of keeping your bulls or your steers fed? And...
Yeah. Sometimes if we're gone, our dad feeds them.
We're like in the morning.
The majority of the people that we know in agriculture are a family, generations of families working together.
And I think ours is a pretty good example. We are also a corporation. I mean, it is, from a business standpoint, with the state of Kansas, it is a corporation that has stockholders, but those stockholders happen to be Amy and me, my mom, and my dad, and my brother. And so, you know, what's corporate agriculture? I guess I'm corporate agriculture. These guys are all part of corporate agriculture. You know, all of this and what you all are doing here, you're to be commended, because
decades ago, if you weren't farming yourself, mom and dad, or at least grandma and grandpa were. Well, fast forward to 2017, 2%, I think, is what I usually hear of the population of Americans are farmers and ranchers. The other 98%, instead of being one generation or maybe two generations removed, they're 4 and 5 and 6 generations. Well, through that transition, we as farmers and ranchers just thought everybody knew what we were doing. We didn't have to tell our story. And in the absence of us telling what we're doing and why, and they're telling a story that I've never seen. And it hurts when I see that on social media, or I hear that in popular press or on television or whatever else. And then as I talk to more and more consumers, they're like, well, that's all we've ever heard. We figured that was the truth.
The country hospitality was really what clinched it for me. Just when you think of a family farm, you think of the farmer and his wife and kids all involved in the operation, and that's really what we had here.
It's really important, in my opinion, for producers and consumers to make that connection. I think today was a very good opportunity for us to do that, and hopefully right and truth will be out there, and social media will tell the real story and the common goings on at today's farms and ranches that raise America's beef.
Well, I think it's fabulous to want to know more about agriculture and to take the step to learn it. And I especially appreciate that they want to learn it from the people that are working day to day in agriculture.
It's very open and welcoming, and I really enjoyed meeting them.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how much they cared for the animals.
I just like what he was talking about, you know, corporate farm versus family farm, and how, like, I mean, yeah, when you say that they have, you know, over 1,000 acres or whatever, I'm like, oh wow. Then you look at them and it's like, no, this is like heart of America, family, wholesome, all of those words.
We left the Perriers and drove through the Flint Hills to the Stevi Livestock Ranch. The one thing that I was concerned about was just the sheer size of it, and wondering if that large quantity of animals, if a farmer could really give them that attention to detail and care that I feel that they deserve.
Hello.
How you doing? I'm Josh.
Josh, I'm Merle.
Nice to meet you.
My wife, Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
I'm Leah.
Leah?
Yes.
You might not let go of my finger.
That's fine.
I'm Merle Stevie and run a cow-calf operation in Waubonsee County in Kansas. Grow our own hay and alfalfa and corn silage. And our guests today were Josh and Leah Swindler. We toured around and showed them the ranch. My son and daughter-in-law, they got married right here, right on top of this hill and looking off that way. And saw some pretty country and saw some cows and calves out grazing in the Flint Hills. And told them a little bit about our operation.
So you burn all your pasture?
Most all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, the cattle do better on burnt grass.
Really?
They'll gain more.
Okay.
It's kind of cool to come through, like, after the first half-inch of rain, after it burns. I mean, it's just black, and then a week, 10 days later, it's like Ireland. You just see these bright green blades sticking up out of the ashes.
So, kind of an odd question, but like for me, so I'm like obsessed with animals. I love animals. I love the farm animals that we have out at his family farm. But you know, I recognize the need to consume meat and eat it. But that's like an interesting dynamic for me that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis, with the fact that I care so much about these animals, and like I cognitively understand that they are going to go for food, but I want to make sure even up until their death, you know, their life is very healthy and for something a happy goat would want.
And we feel the same way.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just kind of wanting to get your perspective, you know, on such a large scale, like how you feel about the animals and what your thoughts are on the whole production aspect, I guess.
Oh yeah, we work about as hard to take care of them as you do your kids, you know, but it's a business too. You gotta make a living.
When our kids were in 4-H, we always, you know, had to talk about this is the end product, you know, this is what's gonna, and they were very aware, you know, but they spoiled them rotten until then.
That's the thing is, we don't want the cattle to ever have a bad day. Yeah. Even on that very last day, they don't feel any pain. That process, even at the harvest facility, is so quick and humane. They live a great life up until it's time for them to fulfill their purpose. The same people who can feel very good about putting a set of healthy feed yard calves on a trailer to go to a packing plant are the same people that will stay up until the middle of the night tubing a calf that wouldn't nurse its mother and needs to get colostrum at the very beginning, because you never write off the life of that animal before it's ready for its time.
I can't even imagine with this many animals to worry over.
He pointed out his bulls that he had purchased and kind of explained the year-round operation. They use seed stock bulls to enhance the quality of their herd. They then raise calves to sell to feedlots.
I think it's really important for us to connect because they hear a lot of negative from outside sources, and they need to hear, you know, how much we really do care about the animals and how important it is what we do to take care of the environment. And so I think they need a first-hand experience with some people that are in the business that can show them what we go through each day in trying to make the life the best we can for the animal that we have.
Well, I just hope they tell their friends when they get back to the city that, you know, we're all kind of in this world together, and we need to help each other out, and everybody works together. Well, I think that'll be good.
I love that. I mean, I liked how, you know, even though a lot of these animals are headed to the table, you can tell that he still really cares for them.
So it's Sunday morning and we're on day 2, and this afternoon we'll actually have the opportunity to head out to Harrington, Kansas to visit Tiffany Cattle Company, which is a family-owned and operated feed yard there with 2 brothers, Sean and Shane Tiffany. But this morning we're actually taking up the Tiffany family on their gracious invitation to join them at their church this morning. This little church right here is where we're headed.
Morning. Glad you're all here. And if you're wondering what the cameras are about, I better introduce those guys.
Today we started off the morning with going to church with Shane in Alta Vista. It's a beautiful little church and we felt very welcome, and literally walked right across the street to a church member's house for lunch. Apparently they do this every week.
Succulent roast beef across the street.
We had more roast beef. I've eaten more beef this weekend than I usually do in a month, I think.
Today is a special day for us because we have 2 grandchildren born today.
I had a really good chance to sit down and talk over lunch, and Shane was just kind of explaining stuff that I have never even thought about with a cattle operation. The finding investors and different companies that want to diversify their financial portfolios, buying cattle for them and customizing the feed depending on what the cattle are going to need to make them the most successful, and just handling the transaction from the cow-calf operation, like where they leave that operation and right before they head to be processed. So it's a lot more complicated than I thought.
Hey, I'm gonna go get some Butterfinger pig.
I saw some brownies that look good.
It's beautiful Sunday morning, and we're wrapping up lunch and gonna head over to the feedlot with them. The feedlot was probably the stop in the journey that was of most concern to me, just because there's a lot of negative publicity and stigma associated with confined animal feeding operations. I definitely didn't hold anything back and fielded plenty of questions at him.
What's the benefit of them transporting so far versus, is there just a lack of quality custom feedlots?
Well, yeah, I mean, 75%, really probably 80% of the cattle fed in the world are fed within 150-mile radius of Liberal, Kansas, or Dodge City. You know, it's where all cattle from all around the country are shipped here. There's several reasons for that. One is the packers are here. And so it's easier to freight them when they're young than it is to freight them when they're big, right? Yeah. Just the sheer economic. My name's Shane Tiffany with Tiffany Cattle Company. We're located in Harrington, Kansas. Today's been a fascinating process with Josh and Leah coming in from St. Joseph, Missouri, and really what they're doing is wanting to get a little bit more of a connection back to their roots. I just hope that they know that there's people that care a great deal out here in the country that are working hard every day to produce a safe, healthy, wholesome product for their family and our own. Well, come on in. Yeah, you can see a little bit about us. There's our entire families. You can see Sean and I, we look alike. This is where we always like to start. So one of the things that makes us unique is we're built on a World War II Army Air Corps base. We're in this little building right here. And you can see, you know, it's a mile from our north end to the feed mill. And so the feed alleys are on the old runways. And you can see every pen. It shows the date that they came in, how many head are in there, and then the different owners. Just to see the hunger that they have to just increase in knowledge rather than just hear something or read about something in the paper and just being spoon-fed it, but instead they took the time and the energy to come and actually see it in real time and in real life and make their own judgments. Let's go get in the truck and go look at some feedstuffs and some different things. You know, Sean and I are very proud of this facility. We spend a large amount of our life here, and we put a lot of time and energy into making it to be the facility that it is. You know, it's hard work and it's early hours and it's not always glamorous, but it's such a needed and just a great thing. I mean, we feed people every day, and what an encouraging thing and what a great profession to be in. Good day or bad day, you can go home at night and know that you help put food on someone's table. And so to be able to just walk around and show people what it is that we do and what we're passionate about, I mean, who doesn't like doing that? And then not only that, but my wife and my kids were here today. You see, they'll come up and eat. There's some laying on the concrete, they will, but you can see the mound also. How the mound's nice and dry.
Yeah.
And so they'll spend the majority of their time, I mean, the pins are dry today, and so they'll be spread out throughout. But in a muddy condition, they would be up on the mounds.
When they're in transport, do they have access to water inside?
Not on the truck.
Not on the truck.
But cattle can only be hauled so far without taking a break, or so many hours without taking a break.
Okay.
But from our plants, from where they're slaughtered, we're only 2.5 hours, 2 hours.
And when they get to the plant, they'll offload and have access to water there.
Well, you can see how calm they are. I mean, we could go out and walk in that pen and it wouldn't bother them. You know, there's that guy on YouTube that plays the trombone for his cattle and they all came around.
Oh, I have not seen that.
Have you seen that? Well, it was a big media sensation. And for a kid like me that's grown up around it my whole life, I'm like, why are they making such a big deal? If I went out in any herd of cattle and played my trombone, they'd all come eventually. I mean, they're curious animals.
They are.
They're feeling pretty good today. You see, you'll see them sometimes when it's just been hot, and then when it gets to be a nice cool day, they'll run and start kicking their feet and feeling good.
I was really impressed with knowing that the men actually physically get into the pen with the cattle every day to check them over for illness.
You see the pink tag that's 0309? That calf's been doctored. So tire mats for the cattle, so when they're leaving the chute, you don't want them burning their feet, peeling out on the concrete and stuff, so the rubber is there. And we're a low-stress cattle handling facility, and so if done correctly, if the guys do everything right, those cattle will naturally flow without much pressure from us.
If you or I go to the same doctor with an ailment and we need an antibiotic, there's a good chance that if we have the same thing, we're going to get the same prescription as far as milligrams and whatnot. If a calf comes through here, they're going to look at the weight on that animal and give a dosage of antibiotic that is very specific to that weight. And that really helps target their ailment and the efficacy of that antibiotic for use versus just a blanket dosage.
That's even almost done for them. So once again, there is all the information on every pen in the computer. And so that calf will come in, they'll type in that lot number. The computer will know really closely how much that animal weighs just based off of their time on feed, their in weights and things like that. They'll type in a diagnosis like respiratory, and it'll pull up the exact treatment protocol, how many cc's of what antibiotic to give, and all of that will be done. Like Colton was out here just probably last week, wasn't it, Colton?
Yeah, Thursday.
We did 1,000 head in that day.
Through the chute? Or?
Through the chute. Wow. So it was a big day. But we had a lot of processing to do. Yeah. And so on those days, the cowboys will say, can you bring your boys? We need some help. And so anyway, yeah, that's where Sean and I started too. We started processing in the processing barn and washing waters, and but Colton's also going to spend time in a feed truck and on the nutrition side, and he's going to learn how to weld and run a cutting torch and turn a wrench and all of those things. Let's keep going.
It was very eye-opening to get a driven tour through the entire feedlot area. Shane explained a lot of things to me that I'd never understood before.
So this is modified distillers. It would be a byproduct of the ethanol industry. So you can smell it. This is like cattle cheesecake.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, this is about 110% the nutrient value of corn.
So does each cow get fed once a day or?
Twice a day.
Twice a day?
Yeah, sometimes a year we'll go up to 3 feedings a day, but generally it's 2.
Those be on colder?
A morning feeding and an evening feeding. Actually, yeah, during the colder months we'll go. And actually during the summer, hot summer months, we won't feed 50 and 50. We'll feed more like 40 in the morning and 60% in the afternoon. Cattle are creatures of habit. And so, like, see that Charolais calf eating right there? Chances are you could come back tomorrow and he'd be right there. Like that's his dinner table spot. And so that's why consistency along the whole length of the bunk is so crucial, because if that bunk is empty, he won't get as much to eat. If it's over full, he'll get too much to eat. And so consistency, our guys are trained to, to feed as evenly and as accurately as they can, every pen, every day.
And so your nutritionist works up, so do they say, all right, for the day's ration, the cow's going to get, for example, 2 pounds of silage, 3 pounds of brewers, or whatever mixed together? Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So just like Carol was talking about.
The setup was really interesting, how they had large bulk piles of silage and corn and all of the different components that go into this very precisely measured ration that the cattle are fed. there was definitely a lot more finesse and attention to detail given in this part of the cattle operation than I had ever anticipated.
The plane of nutrition that these cattle are on is just incredibly high compared to even the human side of things. Feed truck drivers would come here, watch your head. They would come here and at their truck level, the computer's there and they can see what ration they're on and it would begin the process of everything they need. Their corn and their liquid would come out of there. That's the main computer and you can see all the different rations. And so on a daily basis in this oven, we're drying everything down. So you weigh it wet, then you weigh it dry, and you find out if all of the feed analysis is where we want it to be based off the commodity so that the ration's fine-tuned. This would be the micro machine. So if you come over here, scales and metering systems. So 4 on this side, 4 on that side. And so it meters it out on a parts per million basis on weight so that you can get in and then you buy everything in bulk.
Is that an antibiotic?
This is an antibiotic, yes. Yep. Oreomycin is CTC, chlorotetracycline, oreomycin. If we have a whole pen that's fighting some low-level subclinical stuff or that we're worried about, if they got foot rot or if they've got some low-level respiratory issues, but rather than having to pull them and doctor them all, we will do a pulse feeding of the antibiotic in the feed.
Gotcha. So you don't...
On a controlled level.
Okay, so you don't, like, everyone doesn't get antibiotics in their feed?
No. Only on a case-by-case basis as needed.
I learned a ton. Like, my brain kind of hurts from information overload. They treat them appropriately and not, you know, just blanket antibiotics. They customize it. They have a vet on staff for consulting and a nutritionist. Everything is precision.
We not only do the feedlot side, but we also have a sizable farming operation. And so to be able to show Josh and Leah some of the unique things that we do when it comes to cover crops and the utilization of some growing crops and to try and have crops growing on our ground year-round rather than leaving things set fallow.
I have to ask, what is the tire for?
Oh, well, so this was stuff that we grazed.
Oh, okay.
And so they've got free choice mineral when they're out here grazing. There's free choice mineral in it. And so this is triticale, rye, some tillage radishes, some kale. We'll be able to find some kale in there. You can make a salad. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also some cowpeas in there.
Nice, and it's all just mixed?
And it's all just mixed.
Cool.
See, look at that. That's some kale.
Nice.
Big, gigantic kale. Huh. Isn't that crazy? And so there's stuff in everywhere. Here's some more kale. And then there's a radish, a tillage radish.
Yeah.
And you see how it's growing deep and breaking up some stuff. Yeah. And so there's a little bit of everything.
So you mentioned your initial plan was to chemically spray the ground to kill this. Mm-hmm. Are you going to still need to do that afterwards?
No. What we'll do is it will try and come back, but probably not by the time the corn canopies. Yeah. So we'll still plant corn. Dad will be here. He's our silage chopper, and he will chop this field, and then we'll plant corn right into it. So just an incredible crop. And the other thing is those 90 head of heifers gained 2.5 pounds a day for 60 days on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And look, it's taller than you, Josie. Where'd you go?
Man, it's so peaceful out here.
Yeah, it is nice, isn't it? We are literally out in the middle of nowhere, so it's good. We get good sunsets here.
Oh, yeah.
To get to know Josh and Leah on a more personal level and what makes them tick and what they're passionate about and you know, what their professions are and what their dreams are. Just an overall incredible day, really rewarding for sure. What a great young couple. and I think the future is bright for them. I'm excited to see what they do with their lives. They've got great potential, so it's been fun.
I honestly had such a great time there. The Tiffany's were wonderful people, and I grilled Shane without any sense of shame or concern about making him uncomfortable. And he addressed everyone with love and compassion and really conveyed to me that there was a genuine sense of concern and regard for the well-being of the animals that they were caring for.
It was lovely meeting. It was lovely meeting you too. Nice to meet you. It was good meeting you guys too.
Morgan.
Nice to meet you.
Take care of your dad.
We started day 3 of our journey by having a pretty long drive back to Kansas City, Missouri. Then we sat down with Kara at a park overlooking the West Bottoms, where our stockyards and packing houses used to be, to talk more about packing houses and the slaughtering process. Looking at the packing house, my concerns were for the welfare of the animals in the moment of their death. If we are taking a life in order that we can nourish other lives, we should do that with the utmost care, concern, and respect for that animal and for that sacrifice.
So I've been through, honestly, I don't know how many times I've been through plants, probably more than I could remember. I grew up on a small registered and commercial cow-calf operation in southern Indiana. My family grew up with a very rural lifestyle. I was in a family of 3 girls, and I was fortunate to have a father who he didn't really believe in a man's work or a woman's work. There was just work, and it all had to be done. I think human nature is to be skeptical of the things that we're not very familiar with. So it's a part of my job that I'm very passionate about, to help bridge those gaps. But I never cease to be amazed. And honestly, you can kind of stand in awe on the fabrication line of the sheer productivity that goes on in those plants, under the cleanliness. The sanitary conditions are absurd, and the skill of the workers in those plants is just phenomenal. They've got that thing down to a science, and they're so passionate about producing a wholesome product and meeting all of their audit points from an animal handling standpoint down to the safety and wholesomeness standpoint. It's just pretty incredible. What we've got to share with y'all today is actually a video from Dr. Temple Grandin from Colorado State University.
Cattle are offloaded as calmly as possible to minimize excitement and prevent slips and falls. It's important to fill the pens up properly and have some room for the cattle to move. It's usually recommended to fill the pens about 75% full. After the animals have rested in the pens, they're brought up in small groups into the plant. And good animal handling requires more walking. You've got to walk more times back and forth between the yards and the chute system in order to move those small groups. But it's really important. In the meat industry, there's an increasing concern about how animals are handled. The chute system in the plant is high solid size because
so let's pause right there as we're talking about just the whole process of getting the cattle off the truck into the plants. It's important to let those cattle have a chance to calm down. And what you guys saw on the screen there, the gentleman that was moving cattle around, that would actually be a point in the plant that's going to be under live video surveillance at all times, to the harvest floor, to the unloading area, anywhere that the cattle aren't considered beef yet, where you have live animals, because they're under a constant audit to make sure that there's not any kind of mishandling. So this is what you see here. This is where the cattle are walking down, and this is towards the stunning area. This is a big conveyor belt that the cattle will actually walk onto. What it does is it carries those animals by their brisket and their stomach, so they are essentially straddling it, and it gives the cattle a feeling of weightlessness. So the captive bolt gun, essentially it renders that animal brain dead. The heart is still pumping. You want the heart to still be pumping to flush the blood out of the system as quickly as possible. But at the point of stunning, the animal feels nothing. There's still a lot of nerves firing in the body. There's actually a USDA inspector that would stand at this point in the line, and what they're looking for when the animal comes off of the stun line is any kind of ocular movement. Ocular movement is one of the first signs of whether or not that animal has any sense of feeling still. So what the cattle are getting ready to go through now is actually a bath, because animals come from a feed yard. We want to remove any opportunity for feces to cross-contaminate that carcass once we pull the hide off. The next step in the chain from the packing plant, that beef is going to be sold typically one of two places, either a retail distributor or a food service distributor. But one of those two distribution chains will then service the two places that the consumers typically have an endpoint. That's either the restaurant side or the grocery store side. Depending on how far down the line the plant's going to go, they're going to take that. We basically take big pieces and make them into little pieces. Then everything is going to be utilized. Some of your large-scale packers will run anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 head of cattle through in a day's time. It's pretty incredible what they can run through.
My big takeaways were that there's way more detail and research and thought that goes into that than I could have ever imagined.
Every step is designed to produce calmness and to make those last few hours of their lives as good as possible.
Even though it was hard for me to watch that video, it was kind of reassuring at the same time, because it really, the animals seemed very, very calm and like they didn't feel a thing, and that's exactly what I would want to happen if they were my animals.
From Kansas City, we went to St. Joseph, to the local Price Chopper supermarket, which is a place where my husband and I grocery shop pretty routinely. We went to meet with the butcher.
Hi, Carl. I'd like to introduce you to Josh and Leah.
Josh and Leah. Hello, I'm Carl Taylor. I've been with Constantino's, the meat cutter, for 5 years. I have over 30 years in meat cutting. I started out in a grocery store carrying out groceries, and it just seemed like the guys that worked in the meat shop, I don't know, that's where I wanted to be. So I couldn't be in there because I wasn't old enough. So I just stayed there till I was, I guess. To me, it's important to always do a good job, put out a good product, and to me, it's easy. It's not work. I just show up. I love it, yes. Today we had a young couple from St. Joe taking the tour of the meat department. There's no quick and easy ways to anything. There's a certain procedure that we have to follow and do with regulations, health department.
How long does a product last once it's out here on display?
Usually a day and a half.
So you have a pretty good turnover in here.
I took them and give them a tour of our coolers, where we keep the product, and showed them our cutting rooms and our storage area. They were, I think, surprised to see the volume. It seems like a lot, but it doesn't last very long because you're turning that over daily. I think the most important thing that I would like people to know, and that we are here to serve them. I hope that they feel like that they can ask us. We'll come out and we will answer your questions and or help you in any way we can. That was really enjoyable. I know that they left with a better understanding of how it's done. And nothing's better than when someone picks up your meat and comes back and tells you, what a great steak they had. And that's what it's about for me.
When we were at the meat counter at Price Chopper buying steaks, I had fresh in my mind the entire production process of the ranches and the cow-calf operation to the feedlot to slaughter, and finally this product ending up ready for consumers. As we purchased that steak, I was just awed by how complex that entire process is. We went back to the place where we started at and parted ways with Kara. She was a wonderful guide, and I look forward to continuing to get to know her.
At the end of the day, meeting good people, spending time with good people, and having fun, human connections, and we had a blast. We learned a lot. You know, we shared a lot of concerns on both ends. That's what it's all about.
You guys take care. Very tired. It was a little brutal. Covered a lot of ground, a lot of information, all packed into 3 days. Okay, it is Monday afternoon. We have concluded our journey, and we are back here at the Swindler household getting ready to cook some beef for dinner. Animal welfare was definitely my biggest concern beginning this trip. Just, you know, I've heard the horror stories or been exposed to the thinking on the other side of the fence of commercial agriculture being really harmful to animals, etc. And my thinking on that has definitely changed because I've seen the level of care that goes into feeding and caring for these animals and making sure, you know, they're not over-medicated and they're not overly stressed. If we're going to consume an animal, that is the type of care that we should be putting into that.
None of them hid any part of their ranch from us, and that was really impressive to see that kind of openness and just willingness to engage in conversation. I think that's really important moving forward, not just on the rancher's side, but on the consumer side, to be able to understand what really goes on.
Knowing that the bad examples that I've seen maybe in the media or online are definitely not the norm, and that the industry is highly regulated and is filled with compassionate, wonderful people that genuinely care about the animals and about the product they're giving to consumers. We're all in this together. We have more similarities than differences. It can be easy to take one side of the fence over another, and we really need to take a step back from that and just sit down at the table together and evaluate the industry and see the process from start to finish and what thought and training and research has gone into it. I wish that everyone who has ever felt uneasy about the beef industry or about agriculture or eating meat could go on one of these trips, and not to change their minds or convert them or whatever, but just to expose them to a broader perspective and talk to these people that really do care so much about the animals and the environment.
I feel completely confident that when I go buy a steak in a store, that it was cared for every bit as much as the cow that grew up on my uncle's farm or the chicken that I raised myself.
You know, I want to put my money towards something that I believe in, and I really feel comfortable with this industry.
If you don't know something, you're going to fear it or not respect it. You know, we all care about the same thing. We want healthy food, healthy people, happy animals, and a healthy environment. And so it just makes sense that we would start that conversation by coming together and just trying to learn about each other.